Welcome to the Franchise Woman podcast, where passion and purpose collide, profits are made, and relationships are forged. I'm Rebecca Monet, CEO and Chief Scientist at Zoracle Profiles, along with my co-host, community advocate, speaker, author, and entrepreneur, Tracy Kawa. Our special guest today is Sharon Estroff. Sharon is the CEO and founder of Challenge Island Global Franchise. Challenge Island Global is the world's #1 STEAM and STEM program and a Franchise 500 ranked international educational franchise with over 100 locations in 33 states and 4 countries. Challenge Island has partnered with over 6,000 schools and community locations and has served over 1 million children. Sharon is also a freelance journalist for numerous national publications, including Scholastic Parent and Child, Women's Day, Good Housekeeping, Parents, and Huffington Post. She's the author of Can I Have a Cell Phone for Hanukkah?, published by Random House. And she also speaks on parenting topics, including raising children in a digital age. Sharon, I have wanted you on this show for probably a year. I'm so glad you made time for us today. So welcome.
Of course. Thrilled to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, this is very exciting to have you on this show today. I don't know about Rebecca, but I know that I am so curious where your passion for the development of children began. Is it something that you came to, or was it literally built into your business, your DNA?
Yes, definitely something that I was born with. I grew up as I have 2 psychologists for parents. And so I grew up, playing with IQ tests for blocks. It's always been around, but I think the funniest story about that is that when I was born, my birth announcement was actually a Rorschach card. And on the back of it, it said, a brand new response to the same old stimulus.
That's
so
good.
I was sort of destined to move into this life of, really thinking about people and the way that they interact with the world and themselves and with others, and emotional health and well-being. I grew up in the trenches of research, lots of research on what kids need and how they can become as emotionally and not only emotionally, but also just sort of successful, professionally successful as possible, and what are all those parts. And then as a parent, I became a teacher, and I was of course very concerned and wanting to make sure my students were able to reach their fullest potential. And when I became a parent, I have 4 children. I totally understood why the parents of my students were such a disaster because you can know everything and on paper completely know what you should be doing, but then whether or not you are able to do it and in the moment, and you want everything for your child. So I came up with the idea of Challenge Island as a way to sort of partner with parents and schools to help children reach their maximum potential, both personally, socially, emotionally, and professionally, so they can be fulfilled.
And I think that's ultimately what we want for our children, for me also now my grandchildren and great grandchildren, is that our children grow up to be healthy, that they have within them what it takes to see life in an optimistic way and to grow themselves and to have success in their lives, successful relationships, healthy bodies, businesses if they want to go. So I think that's what we want. I don't know if all of us know how to make that happen, which is why I'm so excited about what you're up to at Challenge Island. So I have a question for you, Sharon, regarding that. When you look at children, are there 1 or 2 or 3 attributes that you look at in them that says, they're going to make it. They're going to be successful.
Mhm.
They're going to have happy lives. They're going to be healthy. Is there anything that you see consistently over these last 19 years running Challenge Island that says, this is what every child needs, and the child that has this is going to do well?
Yeah, definitely. I think that parents get really, really hung up, and as a society, I think we get really, really hung up on test scores and IQ, and the child has to be a little generalist. They have to be great at everything. You have to be just as good at math as you are at reading and spelling and gymnastics and piano, but in the real world, that's ridiculous. Like, I might have been, a great teacher and an effective teacher, but I would have been a terrible accountant, and if somebody was forcing me to be an accountant, then I would have totally failed. So it's not just about cramming all of that in and, extracurriculars galore. Just always just trying to get, okay. When I wrote my parenting book, chapter 1 is called the Mommy 500. And it's an 18-year race for kiddie perfection that has a finish line paved in acceptance letters to prestigious universities.
Yeah.
And if you think about parenting as that, it's going to be a really, really rough ride, an unpleasant ride for yourself and your children. But what is it, that helps those kids that really, really will succeed in life? And I'm going to take my own kids as an example. My own 4 kids, not the top of every single class from the time they were in first grade. They weren't the ones that they were making the special math class for or anything like that. But just, they were smart enough. And I think that smart enough is something that every parent your child doesn't need to be the star. They need to be smart enough. And if they're smart enough to make it, then that doesn't matter so much, because everyone else is smart enough too. Then what's the differentiating factor? And that, I think, in a word, is really their grit, their resilience, their adaptability, their flexibility. And I remember as a child, we would go, my father is a college professor still. He's 51st year of college professor now, has my daughter in his class. But we would go away for sabbaticals, right, to different countries. And it was hard, being a kid and just having to go to all these places and leave all your friends. And my father would always say, well, you need to be a palm tree, because you're going to bend with the winds. You're not going to break. And that really stuck with me into my whole philosophy of parenting, which is you really need to be a palm tree parent. When you can't be rigid. You have to bend with what your child needs, and also not fall apart, because you can fall apart every day. And if you do, then your kids are going to also fall apart. And I sort of took that with me. But it's true, if you think about the attributes of a palm tree, right? You are flexible. When the winds come in, there's a huge hurricane. And then you have all these houses that are toppled over, and all of the oak trees and the pine trees, and they're just toppled over one after the other. And then you have a palm tree, all the palm trees, and they're just there, they made it. They don't look so good. They usually look a little rough around the edges, but they're standing, they're rooted, and that's what it is. So I started thinking more what are the qualities? And by the way, the Challenge Island logo is a palm tree. It's a palm tree inside a gear. So it truly then became part of my entire business approach. But yeah, the palm tree is resilient. It's durable. It's adaptable. It's hardy. There's just and that is, to me, the differentiator. And it's not just me. It's tons of research. In fact, there's some really exciting research about how a child's resilience is far more predictable of their future success and happiness, both personal and professional, than IQ.
Mm-hmm.
So it's okay if your kid isn't the top of the class, they could still be super successful. And like I said, I feel like my own children have been really a testament to that. We just very much tried to, not ever like push them. We didn't, they didn't have to do tons of extra tutoring after school. I wanted them to be, balanced socially, emotionally, and, so, yeah, so the oldest is a third year resident at Emory, and I have two, a lawyer and another one who is now in law school, and then another is a freshman at Emory. And sometimes I would talk to their middle school. I remember I saw their middle school principal, and she said, I think that the reason, like she said, the kids were not always like the top of the class. She said, I wouldn't have called that they would have done so well in the long run. And she, I'm sorry about that. I have my daughter's text messages breaking through to me. It's the one thing that breaks through. And I knew that was going to happen right in the middle of the podcast.
Always.
Yes. Anyway, but I do think that giving them that space to not, overdo it, and also to teach them to be resilient has been the key across the board.
Agreed.
So,
Sharon, I love this whole concept that you have of palm tree parenting. I also really have been listening attentively to you describing these intergenerational relationships and all this research going on from your parents to you. And you said that your daughter is now in your father's class, is it?
Yeah.
And you studying your children. It's so interesting to me. And I'm curious if you've found that resilience and grit and all of these characteristics that you're saying are so important are these characteristics that a child is born with. Can they be cultivated? If a child has a low amount of resilience, can that really be nurtured and fostered and created?
Yeah. And it's so true. And it's funny that you say that. One of the things that has been found that you can do really quickly at home is telling family stories from one generation to the next has been found to be a really, really important and very easy way to make children resilient. In fact, a child's knowledge of how their parents met, what their grandfather's job was, what their that kind of stuff is correlated with resilience, because that intergenerational factor, when you talk about your own struggles, like when I was a kid, I really struggled and you can kind of tweak it a little bit, but your child comes home with a problem with maybe some kids on the playground. Mm-hmm. And your first response is, I'm going to call that kid's mom, and I'm going to tell that kid's mom that, that kid is on my list, and that, and then of course that's what you're thinking and that's what you want to do. But how is that helping your child in the long run? How is solving their problems for them helping them become stronger? It's not. But what is saying to them, what, when I was a kid, I remember there was this kid on the playground and they would never let me be, on the captain of the team. And I wanted to be and so just sort of telling those stories. And then your parents are looking at you and your kids are looking at you and they're like, you know what? My mom made it. She's okay. Ish. But at the same time, giving them the ability and the space to solve problems. And so I thought that challenge out to make a program that could actually create resilience in children by giving them the opportunity to solve their own problems. Like, this is a whole generation. Like, there's the movie The Sandlot, where the kids are all playing baseball. There's nobody around, and like they're thinking about, it was in the 60s. That doesn't happen anymore. Like, kids don't do anything without a coach or a parent telling them how to do it, how to solve the problem, and so they don't understand. But I thought, what if we could just let the kids figure it out and make it fun? for them to figure it out so that they're not scared of problems. And that was kind of the idea of Challenge Island, you know, that let's give these kids, let them work together. Like they need to read a facial expression rather than an emoji. That would be helpful for a starter. And put them in a group and let them just figure something out. And so we did it. And of course it's more structured than that, you know, and I could go into those kinds of about the structure of Challenge Island, but really what we found is that these kids are so much stronger because of the opportunity that we're giving them. And there's one school that I think of in particular. It happens to be my neighborhood public school, which is like the best public school in the state, which I don't know how much that's saying. I live in Georgia, but anyway, they're doing pretty well. So, but the thing about this public school is that they're very, very structured and rigid, and Challenge Island is like an explosion. It's the opposite of structure and rigid. I think it was Einstein, maybe it wasn't Einstein, but it was somebody who said that the best creativity happens on the edge of chaos. And Challenge Island, we don't get quite so close to the edge of chaos, but it could be perceived that way. You know, the trick is never letting it get over the edge, because then when you're in chaos, nothing happens. But nothing good happens. But if you can let them really have that freedom. Anyway, back to the private public school. So when we got there, the kids, the first thing I noticed, because we come and we do the after school classes, is that the kids are like, they have these hall monitors and they have this white plastic finger that's like on a stick, and the hall monitor stands there. And if the kids are either talking or they're not on the second single file second tile, that's what they call it, the kids would be poked. The hall monitor would poke the kid on the shoulder and make sure they get in the single file second tile. So I was like, oh gosh, this school, I don't know how the Challenge Island is good. I think they're gonna throw us out of here but what we ended up happening was a few things. One is the classes the classes filled up in like half a second. They ended up having to add a whole other day because there were so many kids that wanted to get in. But also, we saw something that happened with the kids, because after I'd been in lots of other schools, and then when I came in this school, we gave them the challenge. So let's say the challenge is, okay, guys, we're in Time Machine Island. We're going to go back to the 70s, and we're going to do a pinball machine. And there's some stuff in your treasure chest. And this is what a pinball machine was like. And we used to go, you know, kids would go with the quarters. We give them like the background. This is what pinball machine was like. Well, now there's some stuff in your treasure chest. I want you to go in there and you guys just figure out how to make a pinball machine and show us in 30 minutes. So they go in, and unlike the other schools where I had been with them for a while and the kids would just dig in, these kids were, you know, waiting. And I said, what are you guys waiting for? They said, well, how do we make the pinball machine? And I'm like, I don't know. You guys need to just figure it out. That's what you're here for. I was here just to bring the stuff. And then they just, you know, were able to do it. But every step along the way, they were like, is this okay? Can I use this balloon for like this reason? And I would just say, sure, you guys do whatever you want. This is your pinball machine. And they were so afraid. But by the third week, when we would come in, they would just dig in. They were like, oh, we don't even have to hear like we call it our, our council at the beginning, where we sit down and we talk about the problem. But they're like, let us just get started. They just dug in. They wanted to get started. Well, then the next semester, there were so many kids that wanted to be in that class, we added another day. So the Thursday class had filled up immediately, but the Friday class were all new kids. The Thursday class had filled up with the other kids because we let them sign up early. And we come the next, and I kind of forgot how far they came, but we come in, and I don't know what island we were doing, Disaster Island or something, and they were designing some Titanic things. And the Thursday class, we're like, okay, in it, and then we go into the Friday class, and the kids were like, what do we do? I don't know what to do. Like, and again, asking me every step of the way. And It was like a really meaningful moment. Actually, my teacher and I, we just like start bawling because we're like, oh my God, it made a difference. Like, do you see the difference between these kids and those kids? Because, and we know that we were that difference. And I would have teachers from the school whose children would be in my Challenge Island class, but they were also teachers at that school. And I remember one in particular just would come in and just cry. She said, this school, it's not my child. All I hear about is that he's ADD, he's out of his seat, he's this and that. And she's like, do you see any of that? I said, honestly, I have not seen any of that. I said, I think, in fact, every kid in our class is probably ADD. Like, that's a good thing in our class because you can multitask. And she would just say, I just wish school could be like this. But I know that we impacted that child and so many other children because we gave them those skills to just tackle a problem and look at it as something exciting. We say, look, it's like climbing a mountain. If something doesn't work, then that's exciting. Like, would it be fun to climb like a tiny little cul-de-sac or something? Like, no, it's fun to climb a mountain because it was hard and you got there. So that's part of it.
So what's fascinating to me is a couple of points here. One, this rigid way of teaching where you have to be in a perfect line and you're waiting for instructions and there's a right way to do everything and you're waiting on authority to tell you how to do it. All you're really doing is mimicking and echoing back what authority is telling you. It's not engaging the mind, the critical thinking, the problem solving, the creativity that is innate to every child. Every human being has it. It's beaten out of them through conformity, right? Having to conform. So these challenges that you have created, which are actually play, right? It looks like play, is allowing a child to bring forth this problem solver, this creative thinking, this critical thinking, this team building, this tapping into one another's talents in an environment that they don't even know that's what's happening. They're just playing.
Right.
At that point.
Yes.
And these are skills.
Exactly.
These are skills that will go with them their entire life, that they can use in business, they can use in their marriages and raising their own children someday and being an active part of their community.
Yeah, it's so true. And there was actually this really great study that was done by Google. It was a longitudinal study. I think they did it over like 10 years where they were trying to figure out who were the best recruits for them to bring into their company. And the way that they looked at it was they looked at over a series of many years, who had they brought in and who had gone the distance, like who was going to the C-level, who was really succeeding. And it was interesting because they had always sort of traditionally gone to like MIT to find like really techie kinds of kids. And so they did this, and then they came out with the results, and they were shocked. This is what the results were. The results were that there were 8 characteristics that they identified in their most successful employees, and then they ranked them 1 to 8, and number 8 was STEM. So the STEM was important. It did help these people go the distance, but it was the least important characteristic of those most important characteristics. So we love that we do STEM and STEAM in Challenge Island and that children get STEM and STEAM in so many ways. That's really important. But it is not, you can't just feed it to your kid and then all of a sudden they're going to go become the CEO of Google. Mm-hmm. Right. But those other characteristics, what were they? They were resilience. They were grit. They were flexibility. They were the ability to listen to somebody else's perspective, the ability to turn their head around when something wasn't working. All of those kinds of what you would call 21st century skills they are so much more important than anything we can give our kids. Another thing that we also do in Challenge Island that I think is really, really important as well, though, is that we want to give them cultural literacy. So what I mean by that is that there's one of my favorite books it's called The Educated Child, and it's really old and it's really big. And it says everything a child should know before they graduate from 8th grade to be a culturally literate adult. And I think that if you have the resilience, if you have the literacy and those kinds of, what are those kinds of things that you should know? You should know that the Eiffel Tower is in Paris. You should know who painted the Mona Lisa. You know, just things like that make allow a child to get out of their one little world, no matter how whatever their economic level is. If they know those things, they're going to be able to break out of whatever it is and go beyond. So in Challenge Island, we are every semester takes place on a different island, and those islands are never science focused. They're always, we bring in engineering and STEM, but we always bring it in through something else. So we have our Challenge Island World Tour, and we go to the Eiffel Tower, and they listen to French music, and they they build the Eiffel Tower, which with you know, they have a tower building challenge, but they also create like a picnic in front of the Champs de Mars, and they learn about French food, and they design it and they make it with clay, and you know, so you're bringing in the artistic part, and they learn French words, and we speak in French. And that is, to me, you cannot just take, you know, STEM and think it's going to work its magic because you put together a Lego that you followed somebody else's design. It's all about this. And so everything that we do, and I think my ability, and look, I am not a perfect parent. Probably my daughter was texting me something extremely stressful when it broke through, but I don't even want to look at it yet. But I think that the key to parenting, in addition to being a palm tree, is that everything you do, and we do this with Challenge Island, you have a split screen. You have on one side of the screen, you have your child today. On the other side of the screen, you have your child 20, 30 years from now. So your child today, you know, it allows you to make decisions that are wise decisions, not just because this is what your kid wants right now, and this is what all the other moms were saying that you should be doing. But if you could think about it in the long term,
Yes,
how it's going to impact them. And so when we do Challenge Island, I think about that. Like I think about when we're doing the curriculum, and I oversee all of the curriculum, and I have people that work with me. But everything that we do because we want the kids to have a blast when they come. We want that to be amazing, like a party, but we want them to also be getting these core skills that they're not getting in school. They're probably not getting anywhere. So we are giving them these skills. And I think that the reason that the schools love to partner with us so much is every educator, everyone who works with children knows how important it is that children get these skills. It's just that you don't have time in the school day because you're trying to do all these other things. And of course, I'm not saying it's not important. I'm not being like, let's unschool our kids. All of the other stuff is important, you know, and there's just only so many hours in the school day. So to be able to bring us in to help them supplement it, whether it's through a field trip, a family event after school,
a party. So I hate this. I hate that our time is up because we could continue this conversation forever. But we do need to wrap up. Sharon, first, we want to invite you back at some time.
Oh, sure. Anytime.
And then also, how do people get hold of you to learn more about you and more about Challenge Island?
Yeah, so you can go to our website, www.challenge-island or challenge-island.com. And you can just press the info button or contact us and contact us there, or info@challenge-island.com. That's the email. or
Perfect.
find us on social media. But yeah,
Excellent.
and I would say that our owners are all palm trees or learning to be palm trees, and it's really fun. And we have our conventions on islands.
Oh, fun. Tracy, any final words for Sharon before we wrap up?
So impressive, just really impressive how I think you've probably by this point made an impact upon thousands and tens of thousands and hundreds of thousands of kids. So just commending the work that you do and all of your palm tree parents and all of your palm tree owners. Really fantastic.
Thank you so much. You guys were really fun. This was a really fun interview.
It's a fun, you made it fun, girl. So thank you for being here, and the rest of you listening in. Thank you for listening in to the Franchise Woman podcast, where passion and purpose collide, profits are made, and relationships are forged. We'll see you next week for another interview. Thank you so much, Sharon.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah.